Okay. Pick a card, any card. Go for it. Well, I'll pick one. Anyway, a few remarks on culture deriving from my previous video on the atomic bombing of Japan. As you can see, I survived the little flyover from last time. One point stressed by my critics was that the Japanese military culture of Bushido, roughly translated as love of motherland, death before dishonor, emperor worship, self-sacrifice, in the name of all three, would demand a fight to the death against Yankee invaders. Well, I happen to live in a part of the U.S. that used the same rhetoric and in the end came to the same realistic terms as the Japanese Empire, regardless of bitter ravings to the contrary. All of which led me to reflect on human culture in general. It's not immutable, it's not genetically determined. It reflects the general possibilities and limitations of human nature, wherever it's to be located, wherever you find humans. Think of it as a deck of cards, 52 of them, with 4 suits, 13 each, hearts, aces, spades, clubs, face cards, aces, no matter how you cut the deck, no matter how you play the cards, no matter if you deal from the top of the deck or you deal from the bottom of the deck. You're going to have the same elements in each deck, just as you find the same elements in each human culture. Cut and played and dealt according to circumstances, which in time will harden to set rules of the game. But as we know in reality, these rules are subject to change. As new ways are found to cut the cards and play the game, yesterday's cheating will become acceptable strategies for today if they work to the satisfaction of the greatest number of players. Culture is a game that is always evolving, and when it's cut in stone, the gap between how people really play and the rules are always large enough to just fall into. Okay? Culture is at best a rough guide to the real behavior of real people in real circumstances. And people will come to terms with them as circumstances change. Culture will therefore change itself through different interpretations of the basic maxims or the outright rejection of the old rules altogether. Common sense, okay, should tell you that pointing to a given cultural practice, the way we've always played the game is how it's always going to be played, how it must be played in all circumstances, like some sort of robotic programming, it's misleading and ultimately false. Which is why, to refer to my example here of Bushido, the Japanese culture of self-sacrifice as somehow justifying the use of atomic weaponry is equally misleading and false. True that the hardcore Japanese militarists of that time did believe that physical Bushido, a literal national falling of the sword, was the only face-saving solution to Japan's impending final defeat. The atomic bomb gave them that only way out for them to save honor as they understood it. But by that time, the majority of Japanese officers, to say nothing of ordinary soldiers, understood it in a different way and were not willing to subscribe to physical national suicide by Rambo Semper Fi Bushido, a mixed metaphor that underlines the common essentials of human culture, by the way. Their prevailing definition had been revised by an individual and as well as collective recognition that circumstances had changed and they would instead fall on psychological swords and accept spiritual self-sacrifice to save the motherland and the emperor. And most were already prepared to do so before the first bomb ever was dropped. I'll wager it was that definition of Bushido that was uppermost in the minds of those Japanese officers tendering the empire's surrender aboard the battleship Missouri. And these hardliners reasonably accepted this new view, just as the United States dropped its medieval code of unconditional surrender and also came to terms with Japanese reality. Using that example, we see Bushido culture had evolved into something beyond the simplistic determinism. of either Japanese hardliners or certain American historians that wish to use this to justify their own aggression. Now, all this just means that human culture is always an ongoing interaction of human will and human nature in a given time and place. Circumstances, always fluid. It's revolution, within the limits of human intellect. Some things will stay constant and are universal in all human cultures. Basic ethics regarding truth and fairness, the relationship built around the life pattern of birth, maturity, reproduction, termination. But beyond that, you simply cannot generalize and give pat answers to questions that are complex and often painful for the individuals involved. So, that said, let's see what culture I drew, what card I got here.